Welcome to the next episode of Hip Hop Reminiscence. I'm your host, Joe Rosen, here with my co-host, Fuzz Jackson. Fuzz, tell him what's up.
Greetings and salutations, people, and welcome.
We're deep into the 90s now, right? Like we've had to split up the 90s because there's just so much.
Right.
There's so much. And last week we did 1990 to 92. I think today we're going to try to do 93 to 95, although our producer JR doesn't either thinks our episode's going to be 4.5 hours long or we're not going to be able to do it. So Fuzz, let us dive right in. And I am going to ask you a first question, right? Because I look at 93, I look at 94, and I look at 95. And without getting ahead of ourselves here, I think in 94, there are two records that stand out. I think in 95, there are two records that stand out. And I think in 93, there are three. So I am going to say in this order, and it is really hard because these three, if I was naming my top 10 albums of all time, all three of these would be on the list. Right. Tribe Called Quest, Midnight Marauders, 36 Chambers, Wu-Tang, and Snoop Doggy Dogg, Doggystyle. I would probably go in that order, although it's really hard to make an order based on those three. So Fuzz, first off, are those your three, or am I missing one for you? And of those three, or whatever I'm missing for you, what's your favorite?
All right, so you had Midnight Marauders, right?
Midnight Marauders 1, 36 Chambers 2, and Doggystyle 3. Although, man, it's tough.
Okay, now I got Wu-Tang at number 1. I got Tribe at number 2. I got Balloon Mind State at 3. I got Onyx Back the Fuck Up. Diggable Planets, their first joint. Yeah, I know. Right?
Over Doggystyle? All these over Doggystyle?
Now Doggystyle is next.
Oh,
Doggystyle? Yes. Now you got to remember, Joe, I'm a boom bap guy.
I understand.
Speaking of boom bap, we got Return of the Boom Bap from KRS-One.
We do.
And I got to put my boy Slaughterhouse, our Master Ace Slaughterhouse in there.
I think at some point we're probably going to have a Master Ace episode that I'm not going to say anything and just let you talk, right? Pretty much. I mean, there's some other ones too, right?
Yes.
Tupac.
This is a hard one.
93 is a great year, like a tremendous year, right? You have 1993 by Naughty by Nature. You have Lords of the Underground, Here Come the Lords, which I have ranked 5. You have Tupac, Strictly with Holler If You Hear Me, Keep Your Head Up, Get Around. You have Souls of Mischief, which I like. There was like 2 weeks straight. That's all I listened to was 93 Till Infinity.
Right.
That whole album was good. Queen Latifah, Black Rain, Cypress Hill, Black Sunday, Poor Righteous Teachers, My Boys, Black Business. What's going on with the Black Rain, Black Sunday, Black Business, and then Black Moon Into the State.
Yep.
Right.
I was about to say that. Yep.
But all right. So here's. I know you're not a West Coast guy. I know that. But Doggystyle to me, and time and place, I remember buying it and everything like that, has, I think, of all albums, the best beats of all time. I'm going there.
Yeah.
I think Doggystyle has, and even even the tracks, I mean, it's Dre, right? So even the tracks that didn't get radio play, and I use radio play loosely, but G's and Hustlers, the Shiznit, which is such an underrated song. Obviously Gin and Juice and What's My Name but Ain't No Fun with Corrupt and Daz. Yeah. And Nate Dogg. That was one of the first songs Nate Dogg was on. That album, you know what my least favorite song on that album is the Lottie Dottie remake. That's by far I don't even listen to that. That's like the only one I skip. But I think that album has, along with The Chronic, along with one from 95 that is not Dre that I don't want to give away yet, that we're going to talk about in a little bit. I think it has some of the best beats of all time.
I would definitely say some of the most memorable tracks, especially the joint uh, what's with the Delphonics?
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
that song's crazy. Yeah, and
Yeah,
the last song on the
she's a.
album, the one with the guy with the leak from Illegal,
I think
blam
that's
blam blam till they fall. Is that?
yes. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah, 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 yeah.
but that whole thing like ain't no fun. I know we can
Yeah.
swear on this thing, and I haven't been, but one of my favorite lines of all time is if corrupt gave a fuck about a bitch, I'd always be broke. I'd never have no motherfucking endo to smoke. I love that line. I think it's the funniest thing in the world. Like it just kills me every time. But that
Yeah, that
album.
song
So
is funny.
so why, I guess on Doggystyle, why do you have it down so low? Is it just because of the West Coast?
No, it's not because of the West Coast. Because actually, I don't know. It took, you know what, man? It took a bit. It took a little bit for Snoop to grow on me. And when he first came out, I was a fan of the Deep Cover song,
Yep.
right? I was a big fan of that track. But I just when What's My Name came out, I was a fan, but I wasn't going like buku crazy like everybody else was. So it took a while, but I had to listen to that whole album before I was like, okay, this is this is the shit. Like
I
this is good work. But yeah, it took
we
a
always
minute.
we always talk about albums that you don't skip any tracks, right? And there's not a lot. There, I mean, again, I skip Lottie Dottie for the most part. I think just because I love the original so much, and it's just a little weird and it's slow, Snoop's
Right.
remake and stuff like that. But from start to finish, that album to me is almost perfection. It almost is. And when we talk about perfection, even though I had Midnight Marauders first, and it was close. Like I think Doggy Style's 3, but between Midnight Marauders and 36 Chambers, 36 Chambers is almost the perfect album too. And it was the first time we heard Wu-Tang, and we talked about Wu-Tang a lot early, right? We talked about Wu-Tang in one of our very first episodes about how they came about and what they basically what they spawned when they went individual. And we'll talk about some
Right.
of those albums in 95. But do you remember where you like when Wu-Tang came out? No, it was different, right? And it's hard sometimes in hip hop, right? Like because we're in 93 now. So we've heard political rap, we've heard gangster rap,
Right.
we've heard
Right.
the native tongues, jazzy rap. We're starting to hear the roots, although they're not like their first album came out in 93, but they're not really on the scene yet because Do You Want More comes
Right.
out a couple years later. Um, but Wu-Tang was different, right? You have, was it 11 guys? I would say nine is 11 guys, right?
I
Nine,
think
11
it's
guys. That's a
yeah,
lot.
9. Yeah.
Yeah, 9 guys, right. 9 guys, and everybody's talking about who their favorite is, what does RZA mean? What does Jizza mean? Like, the supreme alphabets and everybody's vocabulary at this time, right? And now
Yeah.
right now it's come back, right? Because you have SZA, and my son asked me, they're like, "What does SZA mean?" I'm like, "I don't know. I need to look it up, but I bet you it has something to do with the supreme alphabet," and it did. I was so excited that I was right because I'm like, "Well, if it's RZA and Jizza, it's got to be SZA, right? Like it's the
Right.
same type of thing." But what did 36 Chambers mean to you?
Well, for me, man, 36 Chambers um is is not only by far one of the top 5 greatest hip hop albums ever, but 36 Chambers gave you options. It gave you options. It gave you an option to pick your favorite MC, to pick your favorite 2 that sound together, to pick your favorite posse cut, to pick your favorite solo song on there. And at the time, nobody was really doing that. And when you had a crew like that, you usually had a crew that they all rapped on every record on the album. You know what I mean? But Wu-Tang was so different. Not only that, the kung fu samples, like everything just sounded so raw. And if you go back and listen to it, some of that shit's recorded horribly,
It
but
is.
it fit the time and the place for it. Like I remember the first time I heard Wu-Tang, I was in my friend, shout out to my homie Chris Sanchez. I was in Chris Sanchez's 86 Mustang. We were going skating at Trailways. We had just read about the Wu-Tang in a small article in the Source. magazine, and he was like, yo, I'm gonna buy this. And he picked me up to go skateboarding one day, and he was playing it, and I was like, yo, what is this? And he's like, yo, this is the Wu-Tang I was telling you about. And after that, my life was forever changed, man.
So I just learned something that I didn't know, that you were a skateboarder, but now I understand. So that's really interesting, because when you said skating, I thought you were going to a roller rink, and I had to look down at my paper, and I'm like, this is 19. I'm like, I remember going to a skating rink in 1985, right? And coming out and like, what was the final song? Like, did you ever go to a roller skating rink in like 85, 86? And the final song was always Apache. Every single time it was Apache, right? By Sugar Hill Gang. So I'm like, why is Fuzz going to a roller skating rink in 1993? But now I get it. I love it. What's your favorite? Man. What's your favorite cut off 36 Chambers? There's so many.
Yo, I got two. Mystery of Chess Boxing.
That's my favorite. Yep.
And Method Man. Those two are equally my favorite, man.
On every playlist, on every hip hop playlist I've made, I have the Mystery of Chess Boxing or Protect Your Neck. Those are the two songs. One of those two songs is on every hip hop playlist I've ever made in my life, because there's other ones on there, right? I mean,
right.
You know, obviously Bring the Ruckus is on there, Cream is on there, Method Man's on there. Like, it's an unbelievable album.
Right.
So talk to me. So this is really where, like, Tupac came out with an album before 93, but this is kind of where he rose to prominence, was this year, right? Because
right.
Holler If You Hear Me, Keep Your Head Up, Get Around. I love Get Around. Like, Get Around kind of, you know, it was like the Digital Underground stuff, right? So it kind of wasn't true Tupac, I guess. But Tupac comes on the scene in 93. Biggie comes on the scene in 94. And I know they were on the scene before, but I mean, you know, with their albums, right? You know, and everything like that. So is this the change? Because Snoop is West Coast, Tribe is obviously native tongues. After Midnight Marauders, I mean, there's other ones, right? But like, you know, Balloon Mind State comes out, and De La went a different direction, as we talked, you know, on the What If episode, right? Tribe had the Love Movement, and a couple of, you know, had the Love Movement, but they were kind of, Midnight Marauders was their last big hit, and Black Sheep did Nonfiction, but it wasn't a big smash. So is this the time? Wu-Tang comes out in 93. Tupac's second album comes out in 93. We also have albums like Onyx, you know, albums like that. Is this the start of the transformation?
Yeah, I think so, because not only that, when you go back to the West Coast was transitioning out of gangster into more of, you know, you had Tribe Called Quest, and then on the West Coast you had the Alcoholics. You had, you know what I mean? So you had these things starting to change. So yeah, it's definitely the switch. And look, and a lot of groundbreaking records came out that year too. So for honorable mention, I just want to shout these out, Joe. You had No Need for Alarm, which was Delve the Funky Homo Sapiens' best solo album. You had and this is West Coast stuff I'm shouting out, okay? Mm-hmm. You had Inner City Griots by Freestyle Fellowship.
Yep.
That dropped. Then you had 21 and Over by the Alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had the Trifling album by King T. Shout out to King T. People forget about him. So you had a lot. Shock of the Hour by MC Ren came out, his solo project, which is a really slept on project. So you had like a transition. Yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, yeah. So you had a lot of different groups from the West that were switching the game up. So for me, that's when I knew the West Coast is going to be different. And not only that, the West Coast is going to try to be that next, like, that strong arm. Because for a while they were winning it. And I think when they switched up, man, it was a whole new era. When Snoop came, oh man.
it definitely was. And it was like, I was trying to find more, because I mean, Tribe, De La, Black Sheep, you know, the native tongues subgenre is my favorite, right?
Yeah.
And I was trying to find more like that, which is kind of surprising that I didn't like Diggable Planets as much as you did. I love Rebirth of Slick. I mean, obviously, you know, a great song, but Souls of Mischief 93 Till Infinity to me was almost a little Tribe-ish. It was more like Farside, right? Like they kind of sound alike. Souls of Mischief and Farside sound like. But that 93 Till Infinity album, I listened to it. That was the only album I listened to for 3 weeks. And I still listen to it. I went back the other day and listened to it, and it definitely holds up.
Yeah. Probably one of the best posse cuts is probably 93 Till Infinity.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about Domino's production. Producer Domino, because we know there's a rapper Domino, but the producer Domino from Hyro made a lot of that production. Dell, Souls of Mischief. We also got oh man, don't go blank, Fuzz. Don't go blank. You got Pep Love. You got Extra Prolific. So yeah, a lot of that Domino production was the foundation for that successful Hyro movement that they had. He was like the West Coast RZA, kinda. Because you had so many subgroups under that,
Yep, I think you're right. I agree. No, I mean, definitely. And it's I think 93 is a little top heavy. I mean, 94 is definitely top heavy. But I think 93 is top heavy. But sometimes here's the thing, right? I think every music genre is top heavy because if you look back in the 90s, there's always one album or two, like when Pearl Jam's 10 came out or Smells Like Teen Spirit came out with Nirvana, like some of these albums, are just so much better than everything else. And I'm not putting, Strictly by Tupac, Here Come the Lords, which we haven't even talked about really, from Lords of the Underground. I mean, great album, start to finish. Back the fuck up. Cypress Hill Black Sunday. It's not as good as the first one, but that had Insane in the Brain When the Shit Goes Down and ain't going out like that. I mean, those are 3 big songs, but I think compared to those 3 albums, or at least the 3 for me, the 2 for you with 36 Chambers and Midnight Marauders, it's just second fiddle because those albums are so good.
Yeah, right? yeah, man. And 90 and you know what, man? Like 93 is one of those sleeper years, man, where you forget how many groups got a rejuvenation record too. Like Leaders of the New School, Time, the Innermost Eye, whatever that came out. Then, hey Joe, check this out. I don't know if you remember this. The Four Horsemen by Ultramagnetic came out.
Yep.
Which is a slept on album. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I mean, their first one's like one of my favorite albums of all time, right? Like, I mean, but
yeah.
Critical Beatdown. But like they're fantastic. I mean, they're absolutely fantastic. So
yeah, man.
So Fuzz, going to 94.
All right.
It's Illmatic and Ready to Die, right? I mean, Illmatic, you know my feelings on Illmatic. I say it every episode. I somehow am able to work in Illmatic, I think, in every episode. And I love Ready to Die. I think Illmatic is, I don't think this is 1 and 1A. I think this is 1 and 2. But I think after that, they're very good albums in 94, but I think Illmatic and Ready to Die stand out. Do you agree or no?
I agree. Yep. I agree. Like 94, that's this list is crazy because I've like 94, okay, 93 was like I'm trying to say, like, it was like that nice bottle wine from like back in the day that you want to pop the cork, but you don't pop the cork, Joe. You let it chill, you don't bother it. But 94 is that bottle of wine that you don't want to pop, but you got to taste it because there's so many heavy hitters, which leads into, Joe, my favorite album of 94 that you would not think would be my favorite album.
Did Master Ace come out with another one in 94? I'm looking. I don't see any Master Ace in 94.
Yo, so. there's no Master Ace, yo. But you know what album? One of the most groundbreaking records that I put second to Nas, before to Cal. All right.
Before Ready, you have Ready to Die down the list a little bit.
I have. So it's Nas, it's Illmatic, it's Beat Nuts, Street Level.
Okay.
To Cal, then Ready to Die.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Like as long as you have nothing over Illmatic, we're good. that's that's all I need. If you had something
No,
over
like yeah,
Illmatic, I'm
yeah,
like I'm done. Like
yeah,
this is it. But so here's the thing with that, right? So this is what I look at. If you look at the rappers in 94, right, Fuzz? So
yeah,
93, you have some of the 80s rappers, right? Not Wu-Tang. That's why I asked, like, okay, Wu-Tang comes out, it's Tupac's second album, but you still have, you have Naughty by Nature, you have, Queen Latifah, you have De La Soul, you have Poor Righteous Teachers, you have Cypress Hill,
right,
groups from the 80s. 90, when you get into 94 though, you don't have as many, right? One that we haven't talked about,
right,
which I would have as my number 3, is Outkast, right? I mean, Southern
yeah,
Playalistic Cadillac Music, that puts Southern rap on the map, right? You have Common Resurrection, which he had an album before that, but that was his second album, but that had I Used to Love Her. You had
yeah,
Gangstar, who was an 80s rapper, although Hard to Earn's my favorite album by Gangstar because it has Dwick
yeah,
and Mass Appeal on it. You have Takal, so coming out of Wu-Tang. That's the first Wu-Tang solo album. You have groups like Organized Confusion, OC, Warren G, Main Ingredient by Pete Rock. And the other one, so before we get back to some of these, Beastie Boys came out with Ill Communication in 94, right? And I'm a huge
yeah,
Beastie Boys fan. Oh, Tribe is my favorite group of all time. Public Enemy's probably second. Beastie Boys are probably third.
right,
But in 94, I'm living in a fraternity house at Syracuse, and Beastie Boys obviously changed their MO, right? They were
yeah,
still rappers, but on this album, they became rockers too, which was fine with me. I liked that. It was good. But I think the amount of times that Sabotage and Sure Shot were played in my fraternity house in 1994 was 8,643,000 times. It was so many times that I'm like, guys, like this is insane. And they weren't even rap fans. Like the folks that listened to this were not hip hop fans. And Sure Shot's a rap record, Sabotage, not so
yeah,
much. Right. But Sure Shot's a rap record, but Ill Communication, I wouldn't even say is a rap record. Like, I didn't even know if I wanted to put this thing in here because it just doesn't, it's not rap like, the first two Beastie Boy albums, were. And
yeah,
you also have 8 Ball. If the Murder Was the Case soundtrack, I call it a soundtrack. You have some of these albums, but
yep,
I think we're making a move, Fuzz. I think we're moving from the 80s into the Tupac, Biggie, Nas era here. This is where we're going.
yes, yes, because yes, I totally feel that way, Joe, because um you got so many projects that came out that sounded different. Like that year, you also had Craig Mack Project Funk the World, and then you had one of the most innovative albums, J. Rue the Damager, and that
Mhm.
production from DJ Premier was so raw and so different. And you had one of the first rap super groups pop on the scene, which was the Gravediggers, and we
Yeah.
already know what that was like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're starting, like you said, Joe. We're starting to hear different beats. The writing's getting different. The bars are starting to come. People are really starting to throw down punchlines. Oh, and you know what else Joe forgot? Speaking of the West Coast, Casual, Fear Itself.
You're going deep on me,
That
man. Like you're going deep
yeah.
there too. Maybe 94 is better than like I thought. Like I thought 94 was very top heavy. And before we die and our producer cuts us off, I think we have to talk about Southern rap. Look,
Yeah.
I grew up in Delaware. I went to college at Syracuse,
Yes.
and I've lived in Boston since 1995. Right. So Southern rap to
Okay.
me is not the same as it is to you guys living in North Carolina. However, I will say this, that I love Outkast. This was the first, unless you want to count like the Ghetto Boys of the early, like late 80s, right? Because
Yeah.
Willie D had the drawl, and right before he left Ghetto Boys. You have Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music that comes out in 1994, which really
Right.
sets the standard for Southern rap, and leads into all of the Atlanta rappers and everybody from the South. So being from North Carolina and having lived there forever, right? Like your whole life, or like in the South your whole life, is that different for you? Like, was that like a game changer, or was that something that you just grew to love later?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a little bit of both because I've always been a New York boom bap rap fanatic,
Fair
even in
enough.
the
Yep.
younger days. Yeah, but when Outkast dropped, that was totally different because it was like, okay, there's some dudes that because I lived in Georgia at the time when they came out.
That's right.
So when they came out, bro, it was different because it was smart, it was witty, and it wasn't gangster, but it was still gangster-ish. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Excuse me. So it was definitely different and groundbreaking. And I remember like when they were doing small shows, man, and they were accessible and you could actually walk up and talk to them and shit, like before they became like enormous. But even back then, when you heard this record, you were like, yo, these guys are about to be out of here. This record's amazing. So yeah, it definitely changed.
I'm looking at the 94 albums on our lists, and I'm trying to think if there's any songs on any of these albums that could have been made in the 80s. And the only one that I can think of is Dwick. Right? Because
Yeah.
Gangstar was in it. Dwick, with Gangstar and Nice and Smooth, that's an 80s sound, right? I mean, that song. But the album isn't like Mass Appeal's not an 80s sound, I wouldn't say. I mean, Gangstar's a
No.
very conscious rapper and like kind of came out in the 80s. I mean, but Guru's been around for a long time and he's raps on a lot of side projects and things like that. So I'm
Right.
like looking at that. I mean, even Beastie Boys, and by the way, Jim, I know Jim, our buddy Jim will listen to this. And one album I haven't mentioned that he will kill me if I don't mention is Organized Confusion with Pharoah Monch and Prince Poe, because that's like
Yes.
he loves
Yes.
he
Yes.
loves Pharoah Monch like in an uncomfortable way, Fuzz. Like he
Shout out to Jim. I love Jim. Yeah, that's a great album though. That
it
is.
is. It is. And I mean, you have like, so did you, I guess getting back to the Southern rap thing, did you like growing up and being in Georgia and then getting to North Carolina, did you sort of migrate to Southern rap, or did you just stick with the New York style?
Yeah, I think I stuck with the NY style, man, because that was just more of my lane,
Yep.
and not only that, like growing up listening to vinyl with my dad and stuff, a lot of the stuff that the New York guys were sampling, I was familiar with the original versions, so it just felt more comfortable to me. But yeah, I do like Southern rap. I don't. A lot of people don't think that. Jr., our producer, probably wants to put me in a headlock right now, but I do listen to Southern rap, but I think I'm a lot more critical on it because being from the South and being where I'm from, it's like I feel like if it's not legit, then I don't want to rock with it. But Outkast is definitely legit. So let's before we even go any further.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And this is their first album, which isn't their best album. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, they got better and better as it went on. This is just the start. But when I look at 93 and 94, I kind of see 93 as the last year of that 80s style, moving in to the like late 90s style, even getting into our boy Jay-Z, who we love, and Lil Wayne, and getting into that style, and we're moving out of that like 80s stuff, right? When you get to 93 and 94, there's not as much Native Tongues. There's not as much Public Enemy. Like KRS-One is still doing his thing, but like some of the rap, Eric B and Rakim, they're pretty much done. Big Daddy's pretty much done. Like, I'm not saying they're not putting out albums. They're just not putting out as successful albums as they did before. All right. So moving on to 95. And man, like we could have an episode for every year. We really could. We could
Yeah.
have I think I could do an episode on Illmatic, like really just on the one album. I mean, there's many of them, but all right. So I'm gonna tell you what I did today, Fuzz,
All right.
and you're gonna think I'm crazy, but it's okay. So one of my baseball clients, Josiah Gray, who's the starting pitcher for the Washington Nationals, um, had his kind of last. He might have one more start, but he had his last tune-up spring training today against the St. Louis Cardinals at 1 o'clock Eastern time. He threw 6 innings, threw great today. I think it was 3 hits, no runs, 5 strikeouts. He looked great. So while he was throwing, I spent 3 innings listening to The Infamous by Mobb Deep, and I spent 3 innings listening to Cuban Links by Raekwon because I
Mm,
can't decide which one's better. I can't. I think the two albums. So I'm gonna tell you this. So in '95, right? So Method Man came out in '94, and then '95 it was like Wu-Tang Central, right? Like we're gonna have like eight different
yeah.
albums on this list that are Wu-Tang albums. I think Raekwon's the best. I think kind of by far Raekwon is the best. I mean, it's basically Raekwon and Ghostface because Ghostface is on almost every single song. But you have,
Yeah.
on that album, you have, Criminology, you have Guillotine. I mean, there's just so many. You have Ice Cream, Incarcerated Scarfaces, Verbal Intercourse. I think Mobb Deep is better. I think it's a little bit better. I don't think it's a lot better, and I'll tell you why. Because
All right.
when we talked about before about the beats, Q-Tip produced Mobb Deep, the infamous, right?
Mm,
It was Q-Tip and Havoc from Mobb Deep, and Q-Tip's beats, as we know, are sensational. I mean, there's just
right.
sensational. My favorite song on this album. So Shook One's Part 2 is one of my top 5 favorite songs of all time. It will be on every list. It's on every hip hop playlist that I'll ever make. Survival of the Fittest, Drink Away the Pain with Q-Tip. You have Eye for an Eye with Nas and Raekwon. I think it's a little bit better. And when I say a little bit better, I mean a little bit better. But I think like there's some other good albums in 95. Like Jizza came out. And by the way, like both the Raekwon and Jizza albums are produced by RZA, right? Like, so
Yeah.
RZA's producing everything. And you have Far Side and then another Tupac album, Me Against the World. And there's some other ones we'll talk about in a little bit. But Mobb Deep and Raekwon, number one, are those your top 2 in 95? And if they are, or if they're not, which one do you like better?
Well, I think 95, it's close because you got Mobb Deep and Raekwon. I got Raekwon and Jizza. But then I got Mobb Deep after Jizza.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
fair. I like the Jizza album is fantastic too. It is fantastic. Like everything Wu-Tang put out is fantastic. But man, Mobb Deep for me, and I'll be honest, I didn't listen to Mobb Deep in 95. I started listening to Mobb Deep. Like, I don't even remember when that album came out. I think I was in like some crazy, like Dave Matthews Sublime phase in like 95, like Pearl Jam or whatever, because I was around it so much and I didn't listen
Right.
to it then. But I heard Mobb Deep when I was in law school, like a couple years later, and I was really, really upset that I missed it. Like, I was
Right.
really upset that I missed it. And Shook One's Part 2 may has one of the best beats ever made.
Yeah.
And I think it's a top 5 song of all time, but I think the album is just as good. But I'm with you. I could see you putting Raekwon. I could certainly see Raekwon being one because that album is fantastic.
Yes, it's such a great album. Not only the beats, the lyrics, the guest spots on it.
Yeah.
It's just crazy, man. And look, and right after Mobb Deep, I got ODB on there.
Another one. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what 3 Wu-Tang albums on my top, on the
Yep.
top of my list. Um, you still got Smith and Wesson, The
Yep.
Shining. You got Soul Food.
Yep.
That's definitely on my list. Oh, who else I forgot? Two honorable mentions that we got to put on there. 456 Cool G Rap.
Okay.
Showbiz and AG Goodfellas.
Yep. We do.
Great album. Great album.
Yeah, we definitely do. And for me, my love of the Roots. I've
Yeah.
seen them live more than anyone I've ever seen live. They're fantastic. Kamal Gray, the keyboardist is a friend of mine. Um, Black Thought, I think, is the best MC of all time. We talked in the Billboard Top 50. Do You Want More, which was their second album, came out in 95, but that's what put them on the map for me. You have Far Side with Lab Cab in California, with Runnin'. Fuzz, Big L. I
Yeah.
mean, here we go with Big L, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
was his debut with Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous. I mean, you have Tupac, Me Against the World. You mentioned Soul Food. You can't forget, Dog Pound too, right? You said,
Yeah.
Dog Food, Corrupt and Daz. Naughty by Nature won Best Rap Album of the Year that year with Poverty's Paradise, even though I have it a little farther down on my list. And you also, and I will never, like, I have to mention this, even though the soundtrack was like whatever. But like, remember back when there were soundtracks? I mean, I guess there are
Yes.
now, but that's when the Friday soundtrack came out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
95, like, I remember when I saw Friday, I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. Like, it is the greatest thing in the world. But so this is what we talked about with Wu-Tang in an earlier episode, right? Wu-Tang, when they originally signed, their individual artists were allowed to go out and do individual albums with different labels, which was never done before, really. Like, just not a thing.
Right.
And this was the year, 36 Chambers was 93. 94 was Method Man, which was the first album. I believe that was on Def Jam. And then 95, you have Raekwon, you have Jizza, you have ODB, you have all of these coming out. And the Raekwon album, I think maybe the reason you and I like it so much, and again, I like Jizza too, and I like ODB, but the Raekwon album is really a Wu-Tang album. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is Wu-Tang #2, right? Because, I mean, like I said, I think Ghostface, there's 17 or 18 tracks on Cuban Links, and I think Ghostface is on like 14 of them or something. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something like
Yeah.
insane. Like, it's a huge, like a really, really big amount. So, I mean, you have basically a second Wu-Tang album that comes out the year after 36 Chambers, which I don't think is as good as 36 Chambers, but it's not that far off.
Right. It's definitely, and when you go back and talk about that album, Joe, and a lot of people's opinions, that album is considered a classic. It's considered a top 5 album. It's probably one of the most prolific hip hop records I ever heard. Like, that album is so like, in my opinion, it's so far ahead of its time with the beats, everything. It's just a perfect album.
Give me your thoughts on Big L, because this is a different step too, right? I mean, Big L, when he comes out in 95, I'll be honest too, I didn't listen to Big L in 95 either. I actually started listening to Big L maybe 10, 15 years ago, because
Yeah.
there got to a point where I just wasn't finding enough hip hop for me, that I was going back and trying to discover things that I didn't listen to years ago.
Right.
And I would like look on charts and things like that, like on best rap albums of the 80s and 90s, and study these charts and say, well, I know that one, I know that one. I knew most of them, right? But like, I remember, I would say the two. So Big L was one that I didn't really listen to in the 90s, and before he passed away. I started listening to him maybe 10, 12 years ago. And the other one, which we talked about, is Ultramagnetic MC's Critical Breakdown, which I did not listen to in the 80s. And I only really started listening to that very recently, like in the last 6 years. And I don't know where I was when this came out. Like, I don't know how I missed that, because
Right.
that album is, I mean, again, that's an 80s album, but that album is so good. So were
Yeah.
you a Big L guy when he came out? Like, because he is obviously a New York rapper.
Yeah, man, I was a Big L fan. When he came, I was really waiting for that album, Joe, because I was already a big DITC fan. So
Yeah.
I had already listened. Yeah, I had already listened to like the first two Showbiz and AG records before they came out. And not only that, I think Big L had a little spot on Diamond D's Stunts, Blunts, and Hip Hop. So I was already familiar with him, and I couldn't wait, man. And when that album dropped, I was like, yo, like, this was really worth the wait. And this guy is a beast.
I agree. Yeah, 100%. And JR is throwing out, and I know he's kidding, but JR is throwing out Bone Thugs. And I want to give my thoughts on Bone Thugs here. Bone Thugs, to me, was like, it was hip hop that people that didn't listen to hip hop liked. And
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like, obviously with the Crossroads, and I know it was like, dun, 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 dun. Like, I remember my little brother, who's not little anymore. I mean, I'm 49, he's 37, but he hates rap, hates it. right? And like he'll send me a rap like every once. The most rap he likes is like Linkin Park, right? That's not.
Right.
I mean, it
Right.
has the rap aspects of it, but I remember when he was younger, he loved Bone Thugs, and I'm like, man, like this is not my thing. And I think Bone Thugs, when it came out, kind of set the course for the hip hop that I don't like. I'm not saying it's not successful or that people don't like it, but Bone Thugs led to Diddy and it led to Nelly, and that's just not my thing. It's just not my thing. Like Diddy almost killed rap for me for a little while. And I'm like, man, like he just killed it. And then Nelly, I don't know. Like there is one song by Nelly that I like, and I think like I am number one. I just because I like the words to it, but the sing songy, I don't know. Like I don't even know. I mean, I shouldn't be like ripping on Nelly right here, but at the same time, this is my issue with Bone Thugs because I think Bone Thugs led to this deviation of rap in a line that I did not like.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think that Bone Thugs maybe set up the innovation, and maybe that those that tried to follow ruined it?
Maybe it very well could have been. I just couldn't get past the dun 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 dun. Like I just couldn't get past like the sing songy stuff. And they
Yeah.
did not bring us. They did not bring us Kendrick. Come on, Jr. They did not bring us Kendrick. They brought us. They brought us Nelly. That's what they brought us. They brought us Nelly and Diddy's little, Diddy stuff. And that like Diddy to me, I mean, my thoughts on that. But anyway, I want to talk about I want to talk about um just because you can rap fast don't mean you can rap. All right. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Hey, one group I want to talk about that we haven't really talked about before, who's a friend of the program, right? Like we hope to have DJ KG on here at some point, and I'm pretty close with Vin Rock and obviously Tretch from Naughty by Nature. They had a pretty good 3-year run here, or 4-year run,
Yeah.
right? I mean, 91, they have the first album. 93 is 1993, which maybe has their most famous song of all time, Hip Hop Hooray. But probably start to finish wasn't as strong. Certainly not as Naughty by Nature, and probably not even as Poverty's Paradise, because at the end of the day, they won Best Rap Album for that. And Fuzz, did you know in 95 that was the first time there was a category for rap album? I did not know that
No.
before I looked it up. So Poverty's Paradise was the first Grammy, I believe Grammy, for Best Rap Album. It was the first time that was a category at the Grammys.
Wow. I did not know
Right?
that.
And that had
Damn.
Feel Me Flow. I mean, that was the big cut on that. But Naughty by Nature was very good. KG is a fantastic producer. He's a fantastic DJ. Vinny's the man, great guy. I think Tretch is one of the best MCs. He was very high on my list of MCs. So I definitely want to give props to Naughty by Nature because I feel like we haven't talked about them enough. You know what I mean?
No doubt, no doubt. Tretch is definitely a lyricist and a half. And not only that, his delivery, man, is so like intricate. And if you're a real MC, you gotta put Tretch down there as far as guys with breath control, bar structure, cadence, all that good stuff. I think he's really, really slept on. So Tretch, I know you probably don't know who I am, but I'm gonna give you your flowers now. Like you are a dope lyricist and really slept on. So you need your flowers, bro.
I want to tell you a little quick Naughty by Nature story before we move on. So this is really a Tretch story, but years ago I went to I think it was like an I Love the 90s tour. And because I've done some work with the Naughty by Nature guys, they let me downstairs and I basically watched the show from backstage, which was kind of cool. And so it was Naughty by Nature, Bismarcky, rest in peace, Biz. Like he was there, like, and I had a Corona and he wouldn't take a picture of me at the time with a beer because he was doing Yo Gabba Gabba and he wouldn't take a picture of me because I had like he said, put the beer down before I take a picture with you. And I have a great picture, but it was like CNC Music Factory were there. Rob Bass was there. I have a great picture with Montel Jordan, who's like 6'8", and Cisco, who's like 4'8", like 5'8", excuse me. Right. Like that was it. But after the show, me and one of my business partners was with me. We go downstairs and we're with the Naughty by Nature guys in their dressing room, or in their green room, excuse me, and they had a few other folks there with them, and they had a box of Corona, but no bottle opener, right? And so no one was drinking because no one had a bottle opener for the beer. And so I'm like, all right, let me figure this out. So I think I'm cool, and I try to do the thing where you put it on the side of the desk or whatever, the side of the table, and I can't do that. Like, I'm not good. So Tretch walks in, and he's like, give me that, and he takes it and he puts it up with his teeth, and bam, and he gives me the beer. And it that was how. And so he was doing that all night. He was opening beer bottles with his teeth. So I will never forget that. And that was, a crazy story from Tretch. But all right, Fuzz, before we finish and we get to four words, I want your best 5 songs from 93 to 95. Your favorite, doesn't have to be the best, but your favorite 5 songs from 93, 94, and 95.
All right, 93, we're going to go with Mystery of Chess Boxing. 93 again, we're going to go with, let me go back and make sure I say this, get this right. We're going to go with Rebirth of Slick.
Okay.
Then they're going to pop to 94. And we're going to do, where is it at? We're going to do Showbiz and AG Next Level Remix, Premiere Remix. And then we're going to do Dwick. And the last, we're going to do Jizza. No, I'm sorry. We're going to do Ice Cream by Raekwon.
Fair enough. And those are all great choices. I'm going to do Shook Ones Part 2 as my number 1. Like, that's number 1 for me. I got Chess Boxing on my list too. I got Shiznit on my list. I got Oh My God by Tribe, and I got Runnin' by Pharcyde. And I'm going to say this. I got the whole Nas Illmatic album as my honorable mention. And I would definitely put that. I would put a Nas song there, but I can't pick one because every single song on Illmatic is fantastic. So last week we couldn't do 4 words. Let's try to do 4 words now to finish up if we can. Hopefully we don't have any technical difficulties. And I will throw them out to you, Fuzz. And all
right,
I guess let's hit the music here.
Yeah. Yo. Hey, yo, we back at it. Another hot episode, Hip Hop Reminiscence. So please download. We gonna hit you with 4 more words. So Joe, drop them if they haven't heard.
Proposition.
My composition is so nice. I don't need a proposition. I get it nice. I got that tunnel vision. And when I see that competition, it's none. I leave them busted.
Love it. Wannabe
gangster, but not in front of me. You get stunned like a bee for trying to be a wannabe. And my Fuzz Jackson type of freestyle, something you don't want to see.
Cigar.
I need one in a razor. Empty it out. I'm getting high like a phaser. Real name's Lamar. I need 6 cigars so I can get blunted. Growth is never stunted, never fronted. I got the bars that you really want, kid.
Love it. Last one, Cancun.
Now you can catch me fishing with some fishes and a harpoon out in Cancun, trying to get some sun rays. Got a couple twins, putting lotion on the back of Jack's. The beat is falling back, but I still intact. I take a vacation soon. I call my flight attendant up, let's fly to Cancun. Have a tequila sunrise before noon.
Love it. That's awesome. We totally missed this last week because last week we couldn't do it because we had some technical difficulties and it literally hit right before we got to 4 words. So Fuzz, you're the man. I love it. Like, we got to finish with 4 words every week or else it's like not even a show at this point. You know what I mean? It's so awesome. Well, hey, we'd like to thank everybody for listening in. Last week we did 90 to 92. This week we did 93 to 95. We'll probably go 96 to something next week, or maybe we'll take a break and do something in the middle. But remember, our Twitter is Hip Hop Remin. Our website is hiphoprem.com. And Fuzz, tell them where they can hear you, man.
You can hear me at fuzzjacks.bandcamp.com. Get that Action Jackson mixtape. Check me out on Instagram. One word, your mom's favorite rapper. Twitter, Northjax, that's NORTHJAXX, and Facebook, Fuzz Jackson.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Peace.